It's really my pleasure to welcome you today to our virtual European experience. This is our fourth program, I think, and we are really enjoying the opportunity to travel from home with you. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Kathy Wood. I'm the founder of European Experiences, along with my husband, Charlie, and we're really glad that you're here with us. Today we'll be traveling to France, specifically to Aix-en-Provence, where Jennifer Dugdale will be our host, and I'll tell you more about her in a minute. We had 83 people register for today's program, and based on what I could tell, it looks like we have folks with us from the UK, South Africa, the USA, Canada, and Australia. Many of you have joined us in the past for an experience trip, but quite a few have not. So just a few things about how this program will work. We're getting better at using Zoom, at least I thought we were, but we are coordinating today between two locations, and it's possible we'll fumble a time or two, and we do appreciate your patience. This is a Zoom webinar, so you won't be visible. You'll just see the two of us and our visual aids. And I'll be back later on to help with a question and answer session with Jennifer and share some information as we conclude. If you have a question, you can type it in at any time. Use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, but we will hold all questions and respond to those at the end. And at the end of the session, a short survey will pop up, and if you have time to complete it, that would be great. But you'll get an email about 24 hours from now with a link to the same survey, and we would love to hear from you. We'd ask, just please don't respond to the survey twice. There isn't a charge for these sessions, but we do want to recognize the time and effort of our presenters, most of whom do work in tourism and have been seriously impacted by the pandemic. So if you enjoy the session and you can make a small donation, that would be wonderful. And if you can't, we totally understand that. We suggest $10 to $20. And I want to ensure to you that 100% of the donations for today's session will go to Jennifer. You can pay by personal check, through Venmo, TransferWise, if you're international, or PayPal, and you'll find information on our website at www.european-experiences.com/payments, and I'll show this link at the end of the program. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Jennifer, why don't you hop on here with us?
So here we are. I'm actually really happy to be here. I have been missing my visitors and my travelers. It's been several months, and we all know why. We haven't had our visitors here in Provence, but guess what? If we can't get on a plane today, we're going to make do, and I hope to help you travel to France tonight. Well, it's nighttime here for me, virtually. So first I'm going to introduce myself and my helper. And then I'm going to tell you what we're going to learn today on the theme of French food, something that we all love. So my name is Jennifer Dugdale. I'm originally from California, and I've been living in Europe for about 25 years. 10 of those years were in England. I've been married to an Englishman, and the last 15 years have been in France, specifically in the south of France, so you can't get much better than that. Our family came here a bit like many of our international friends here. We came for an adventure, and it just so happens the adventure just has never ended. So in terms of my professional side, I've always been in tourism, and I've started a few small businesses along the way, mainly specializing in food and wine. And I've had a top food walking tour here in Aix-en-Provence called Taste of Provence. And I also create and lead small group tours across France. So, and I've got a helper today. I'm very lucky. I think, you know, probably Kathy could use her right now, but her name is Olga. So I tell Olga, where you can see we're social distancing. Olga is almost 16 years old, wise beyond her years, and she's a student at the International Bilingual School of Provence here in Aix-en-Provence. And she's come a long way. She's from St. Petersburg in Russia, and she's studying English and French, and she hopes to go to university in the UK or in the United States even. And today she's here getting work experience, learning about tourism and also online marketing. And the good news for her, particularly for today, is that she loves food. So we discovered that because she's also told me that her mother in Russia actually also has a caviar business. So that kind of ties in. All right, so Olga and I, today, we're going to try to give you a little taste of France, but virtually. So I'm going to talk to you all about French food habits, which are very different from ours in all of our English-speaking countries. I'm going to talk to you about the famous food markets of France. Today I went to the market, so I'm going to show you what's inside my basket. And then at the end, we're going to have the briefest of brief little cooking demonstration, and it'll be something that you can definitely make at home. And so I will admit, this is the very first time that I'm doing a presentation virtually, so I hope it goes well. But I do, I know you're all out there. I can't see you, so I'm just hoping that you're all engaged and paying attention. So I'm going to actually ask you a little quiz question. I don't want you to type the answers into your screen. What I'd like you to do is just think about the answer, and then at the end, I'm going to tell you what it is so you can know if you're right. So here's the question. Pay attention. Of course, it's about food. So what do you think is the most popular dessert in France according to French people? So French people have been surveyed, and they've said, our favorite dessert in France is, and for you to think about. Don't use Google to try to figure it out. All right, this is where Olga comes in. We're going to turn on a little bit of some media here with some photos. There's France, the hexagon, as they say, so five-sided country in the middle of Europe. You can see down here on the southeast corner, this is where we are. This is the region of Provence, and we are influenced by the Mediterranean Sea, so we get a lot of warmth. Even Africa is straight across from us, next to Italy. And then here's zooming in on the actual country itself. You can see Paris. Most of you are familiar with Paris. In order to get down to Aix-en-Provence, which is in the southeast corner, super easy. You get onto a high-speed train, and literally you look out the window, and 3 hours later, you are here in Aix-en-Provence. And we get a lot of Parisians coming to Aix-en-Provence for that reason. And here's the region of Provence. We've got Aix right here. Locals call it Aix. And then here's another way to get here, Marseille. We have Marseille Airport literally 20 minutes down the road. And in normal times, you can fly to Paris and connect on a plane down to Marseille. The other way to get to this part of France is to fly directly into Nice. In the old days, we could fly from New York to Nice. I'm sure that will get connected again. And then you can either rent a car or take a train around the corner to here. Now, in terms of what European experiences offers, some of you have already joined Kathy in the Luberon, which is here to the east of Avignon. Kathy and I are talking about putting together a trip in Mediterranean Provence, which would include Aix, Marseille, and Cassis, and all this beautiful coastline right here. And then for a third trip in the area, we're taking a look at what we're calling the backcountry Riviera. This is the famous French Riviera, very glitzy, but we're going to look at a trip in the hillsides, absolutely stunning part of that coastline as well. Okay, well, now that we know where we are, now we can concentrate on the food. So here is a picture from Aix-en-Provence's market, right at the heart of strawberry season. You can even see behind, and there's another seller selling strawberries, but this man, he shows up once at this time of year, and we don't see him again after he's been there for about a month. He goes away and he comes back again a year later. So the thing about Provence and why the markets are so incredible is that it's the fruit and vegetable growing capital of France. We have sunshine almost all year long. Just think south of France in your head. We have 2 main rivers for irrigation. The most famous one is the Rhone River for the Rhone Valley, famous for wine. And we have a very long growing season. Provence is always the first region of France to have the very first produce of the season. And so it's a very well-known fact that up in Paris, in the markets, when they see in their markets the first strawberries of Provence, they say, oh great, that's it, spring is sprung. Okay, so now in terms of French food habits, they are very different from us in our English-speaking countries. It's something like that they're born with. They're very habitual, and they have very strong ways of consuming and eating things, which are very actually pretty disciplined, but they don't see it as a chore. It's just the way that they are. So the first thing, there's sort of 2 main rules of thumb. The first one is that they live for the seasons. So, you know, it makes them happy to see the first strawberries of the season. As I told you what they say in Paris, you know, it makes them really happy when they see the first cherries on, you know, in the market. All these things just represent pleasure to them. So first they follow the seasons, and the second main rule of thumb is that they have great respect for the consumption of food and drink. And so what that means is they sit down if they're going to eat or drink anything. Here, you know, we all know about the French cafes. These people are all sitting down. They may only be ordering a teeny tiny little espresso, but they're sitting down for it. When I walk around my city here in Aix, I notice no French people are walking around eating a snack out of a bag. They don't carry bottles of water with them while they're walking around. They just don't snack unconsciously. And that's just the way it is. And part of this is that on a daily basis, they have a real rhythm to the way that they approach their actual meal time. So here we go. I'm sure you're all drooling right now. This is a typical bakery window in France in the morning. I can almost imagine the butter smell coming out of wafting out of the doorway right now. These are golden buttery croissants and pain au chocolat as well. So that would be the breakfast. You know, they might just take one of these and a coffee, that's their breakfast, because they're working up their appetite for the main meal of the day, which is at lunchtime. And then they do eat very lightly at night. And they would not call their meal at night dinner. In fact, they would call it supper. So for those of you who might have familiarity with the French language, actually the word in English supper comes from the French verb, which is souper, which means to eat soup. So in French, we would say je soupe, tu soupe, il soupe. We are all eating soup. And in fact, I know many French families who just eat very lightly at night, a little bowl of soup with some cheese and some bread. You gotta love the fromage in France. So, and this is all eating lightly at night because of course, this would be an example of a lunch. You know, lunch is typically a 3-course meal and it's almost always hot. And whether you are a little kid at school or whether you are an adult and you're in town shopping, or if you're at work, no matter what, you stop for an hour to have your main meal of the day. Now, if you're at work, many of the companies have subsidized canteens and they encourage their employees to use it as a team building moment. So the guys from accounting will call up the people from sales for, you know, they'll join each other at a table for 8 and they will have a starter, a main course, and a dessert. And the children at the school, it's the same. They will have also a starter, main course, and a dessert. They might even have a little piece of cheese as well. They often have little pre-wrapped industrial types of cheese like brie and even blue cheese. And for dessert, it could just be as simple as a chocolate pudding or a yogurt. I always think the only thing missing for the children at school is a coffee and a glass of wine and a coffee. But actually, for the adults, back at the canteen at work, they are allowed to drink wine as well in the workplace. So how about that? It's no wonder that they eat soup at night. And even Olga and I were discussing this at her school. She noticed that for the same meal that she takes to eat in about 15 minutes, she looks over at the table next door and all the French kids, they're lingering over it for like an hour. So it's just very, very interesting. It's just the way that they are. Now, a weekend meal, or say a dinner at a friend's house, is a different story. In fact, it's an extended story. A meal amongst friends would be what we would call a gastronomic meal. Now, you might have heard of the word gastronomy. That means the study of food and cuisine. So a gastronomic meal means just a very elaborate meal. A gastronomic meal, so a meal at a friend's house, whether it's lunch or dinner, always starts with an aperitif. That might be that's a pre-dinner drink, and it could be outside on the terrace with maybe a few light nibbles, or it could be inside on the couch. And then you move to the table for the obligatory 4 courses, and then a coffee and a digestif or a liqueur. So it's very long. It can go for 3 hours, but it doesn't feel long. It feels perfectly paced and very, very enjoyable. And here you can see, this is a famous painting. You probably, most of you probably recognize it. It's by Renoir, and it's called The Luncheon of the Boating Party. It was painted in 1881, so a couple centuries ago. This is exactly the way people still behave. They're all lingering at the end of their meal, enjoying each other's company. This type of gastronomic French meal is such a tradition, and it's such a social occasion for celebrations and for bringing families together. It's such a ritual that it's actually been recognized by the international body called UNESCO. Now, you might be familiar with UNESCO. They would protect things such as the pyramids or architecture in cities, any sort of important sites around the world. But they also have a very interesting list called the Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity. And what that means is that they are preserving important, significant cultural rituals, such as a gastronomic meal in France, for generations to come. Now, when you're looking at this absolutely stunning restaurant, which is called Le Grand Feu de Bois in Paris, this restaurant can never be taken down because it is a place that hosts gastronomic meals. When UNESCO supports or finances something to protect, it means that there's finance. It means that they're subsidizing it and making sure it doesn't disappear. So in this case, this restaurant would be subsidized to make sure that it's still standing. And in fact, it so happens that it is the first grand restaurant in Paris, a grand restaurant, they call it. It was built in 1874 in the neighborhood of the Palais Royal. And that is about 150 years old. So if you haven't been there at some point, do try it. That's probably a bucket list thing to do in your lifetime. Okay, so we're getting almost to the end of our photos. When you think about the end in terms of meals, you get to dessert. So this is a dessert that's called a Clahuti. And in fact, this is going to be the dessert that we will make a demonstration of. Today, although we're going to be making it with cherries, we're going to be making it with pears, because that's what's in season. These are made, the traditional version is made with cherries. It comes from a very rural region of France. And the word comes from, is basically translated as to fill up. So you're basically making a batter and you're filling it up with fruit. And there's a big controversy in France over whether, you come from a family that keeps the pits inside the cherries, or whether you take the pits out. Our family keeps the pits in because we like to keep the juice intact. We don't want it bleeding all over the place. But there's big controversy over that. So if you do keep the pits in, you have to tell your guests to watch out. Last photo we've got here is just an image of some beautiful produce in a market. I like to think it looks like, when you walk through the French markets, I tell you, they look like like florist displays. It looks like flowers. Those beautiful bouquets of artichokes right there. So the markets live because of the seasons, and because the French also live by the seasons. And this is what we're going to bring to life for you in a video in a moment. Just to say, this video I made for our food walking tours, and it's in the oldest square of Aix-en-Provence, where they had a market in the same place for 700 years. So I hope you're going to enjoy it. You're going to meet all my favorite sellers, and hopefully you'll feel like you've traveled a little bit.
Bonjour, my name is Jennifer, and I'm going to take you on an adventure in the most beautiful and ancient city of Aix-en-Provence. My passion are the farmers markets. Look at all the beautiful colors, and there's amazing smells and fantastic action. Come on, I'll take you there. Honey is a big product in Provence. Look at all the beautiful colors and varieties. It's a bit like wine. Eric, did you make all this yourself?
Oui, c'est ma production.
Wow. What a fantastic morning. I love going to the market. I can't believe the variety of olives on offer in the market. You have the greens that are crunchy and fresh, and the black ones, which are soft. Which one should I try, Mr. Garcia? Is that a green with pesto? Wow, that was great. My favorite discoveries are the new things in the market, and these macarons are very trendy right now in France. Everyone loves a picnic in Provence, and no picnic would be complete without a saucisson. What other ones are you selling, Mr. Saucisson?
Porc,
Pork?
taureau,
Taureau is bull.
âne,
Donkey.
sanglier,
And wild boar. There's some fantastic hot food sellers in the market, and one of my favorites is David. David, what do you have today?
alors l'aioli,
The aioli. So that's the garlic mayonnaise and the steamed fish.
et on le mange le vendredi.
Of course, we always eat fish on Friday in Provence. And there's nothing better than ending my market visit with a perfect French coffee and a moment to look inside my basket and think about what I'm going to cook when I get home. So I actually think I'm going to be making ratatouille, the most famous vegetable stew in Provence.
Right, here we are back. So I hope you enjoyed traveling to the market in the summertime. Now I'm going to show you what I was able to get today. So today we're in the heart of autumn. All the summer produce is kind of on the way out. And just to say, in terms of the French market, in general, people shop every 2 days. In particular, in a city like Aix-en-Provence, where people live in apartments, they just don't have the space. And so they just get a few items, and then 2 hours, 2 days later, they go back again. In fact, if they have a normal size fridge, not even like the big double door, just a simple kind of stand-up fridge, they actually call that an American fridge. They're dreaming, but anyway. All right, here we go. So in autumn, the two main activities that you can think about in autumn here are the wine harvest and hunting season. But hunting season also means mushroom hunting. And so all of these kinds of things are reflected in the market. Let's see what we got here. I don't have it in any particular order, but here we go. It's not just wine harvest, it's also eating grapes. These are my favorite grapes from that are called Muscat Grapes. Look at this. Nothing is perfect at the farmer's market. Nothing is shrink wrapped. Nothing is no shiny apples. And what we do know, though, is that these have been harvested yesterday. You can see how flexible the stem is. It's not even woody. So we're in for a treat with those grapes. Speaking of mushroom season, I also got some wild mushrooms. There's all different types, include different funny ones called trumpets of death. But these here are called girolles. They're really delicate mushrooms. All you need to do is give them a little brush and then saute them with some garlic and butter and put a little parsley in there. Perfect for an omelet. When I see cars sort of parked randomly next to forests on a Sunday, I know people are in the forest mushroom hunting at this time of year. Well, these were nice. These are the pears actually that we're using for our Clahuti. They're called Williams. These are red and they come from the Alps just to the north of the Provence border. I've got Olga tidying it all up, you can imagine. Here's Kathy. Her computer sadly crashed. We can all fill for her a little bit, but she's coming back. Now here, I was really happy to see these, talking about when the French get excited about the season. So walnuts. These are special walnuts. They even have a special label in France, and they come from the city of Grenoble, which is at the foot of the Alps. And in France, when we say what grows together goes together, these would be perfect with some of the other items that I'm going to take and show you, but you can put these in a salad with the pears as well. Some spinach at this time of year. Here's what those walnuts would go with. This is a very funny looking thing. It's probably the only thing in the market that is actually cooked, whereas everything else is raw. So this is cooked. I don't know if you can tell by the stem what this is, but this is a roasted blackened beetroot. And all you need to do, they make it easy for the customers. You take it home, you just peel off that skin, and you can make a salad with beetroot, goat cheese, and walnuts. Perfect. Here, this is what I thought I had pulled out earlier. I saw these today. I just thought they were gorgeous. Little baby eating apples. They're so nice. And it's like they just fell off the tree, honestly. And they're called Reine des Reines, which means the Queen of Queens. So I'm gonna have those in my fruit bowl for sure. I've been seeing pumpkins all over the place. And so, but you don't have to carry a big giant pumpkin around. They cut it for you. So you just tell them, you know, they say, how many people are you making soup for? You say 4. This is perfect. I'm gonna make soup. And almost last but not least, I saw some people walking around with this on their shoulder. Look at this. These things are massive, big giant leaves. You know what these are? This is Swiss chard, and it's called blette in French. And I first learned about blette when my children came home from school and said they had a gratin of blette, and Mommy, could you make it again? So I had to learn how to make these things. And then last but not least, some parsley, which was a nice little gift from the sellers to make sure that I come back again. So they always give a little celery. They don't really give a discount, but parsley. They like to give some parsley as a gift. Okay, so now we're going to do our cooking demonstration. We're making a clafouti. I showed you what that was already. So we're just getting our ingredients out. Now, a clafouti can be made at all times of year by varying the fruits. And I know some of you are watching from the Southern Hemisphere. So right now you would be in spring. And so you could use the cherries. And if you have access to rhubarb, that would be another nice thing in spring. In summer, we're looking at apricots, figs, at the end of summer, plums. And right now we're going to be doing pears. So the first thing you do is just take your oval gratin dish. And basically, I'm just checking the time there. Okay, we're doing okay. Effectively, you want to butter it, which Olga did for me earlier. And then I'm going to take some sugar, just normal sugar, and I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit in there to sort of line the edges. So I'm going to do that. I top it over the sink. Now, this recipe was given to me by one of my old neighbors. Her name was Josette. And Josette was a lovely lady. And you know, she basically said to me, Jennifer, I know you're foreign. I'm going to give you this recipe, but I don't want you to start like making it fussy and foreign. I just want you to stick to the French recipe. It's a very much of a family recipe. So it's all about showcasing the fruit that's in season. So in our case, we're using pears, as I mentioned to you, and I showed you those already. So there's very, very simple ingredients here. We've got a tablespoon of flour and 3 tablespoons of sugar. And I'm just going to combine them in my bowl first. This is the only technical part of this entire recipe. Here's the combined powder there. We're going to now mix 3 eggs into the mixture, not the other way around, because if you add the flour and the sugar into the eggs, it will clump. So we're going to do it just in sort of 3 stages, just little by little. So I'll show you how that goes. I'm going to just pour a little bit in there right now until it becomes sort of a paste. I'm going to show that to you. So I'm just starting with sort of a paste, so you can see that. And then little by little, I'm going to go ahead and add the eggs in there so that it's nice and smooth. I've done it twice now, and I'm going to do it for a 3rd time. By the way, I'm using eggs that come from the region. This is fun. I'll show you this. I like it because there's little lavender on there. Lavender grows in Provence. So those are nice free-range eggs. Now, I've mixed the flour and the sugar into the batter. I don't know how well you can see that. It's sort of hard to get this straight. And now I'm going to add just a little teaspoon of vanilla. I'm telling you, this is the easiest recipe known to mankind, and everyone loves it. Of course, that's why I asked Josette for the recipe. So alwaise put a little vanilla in there. And now you're going to add the milk. But this isn't just any old milk. Again, this is a store-bought ingredient coming from Josette's simple family recipe. Here in France, they call this concentrated milk. In our English-speaking countries, probably you would call it evaporated milk. It's definitely not got sugar in it, but it gives a very nice, rich, concentrated milk flavor. You don't want, you know, Josette said don't use cream. Some people do. But this really does the trick. I know it's like the simplest ingredient you can find, but this is a family recipe. They leave the fancy cakes to the patisserie. In fact, A lot of French people I know do not even bake. And when I've been to the school gates with brownies and with, you know, Rice Krispie treats, they're always asking me for the recipes. Like, oh, Jennifer, can you give us that recipe for those cookies? You know, so they don't really know how to bake. That's why they have the pastry shops. But who can blame them? All right, I've mixed in the milk. I put the sugar, the flour, the vanilla in there. Now, is there anything else? Okay, I've turned on the oven. The oven is at 350 degrees Fahrenheit and 180 degrees Celsius. And now I'm going to add my pears. So I've just kind of cut them into little wedges here. And I'm going to put them, I'm now going to put the pears into the dish. Honestly, they don't have to be organized in a particular way, because when you pour the liquid over them, they end up floating a little bit, but you do want to sort of spread them around the dish. So I've done that. By the way, a little tip for cutting pears in advance is squeeze some lemon juice on them, because they tend to oxidize and turn brown. So I've done that. And now I am just going to pour the batter over the pears. I'm going to take that out so there's no, last thing we need is a little disaster in the kitchen. I don't know how well you can see that. I'm just going to pour that right in. So simple. Olga's starting to lick her lips because she's going to try some clafouti in a moment. So there we go. So I poured the batter in. Now I'm just going to put it in the oven. And that's going to go in for about 25 to 30 minutes. All right, come in here, Olga. And we got a lot going on in this kitchen. So you want to take it out when it's golden on top and when it's still jiggling a little bit in the middle, because when you take it out of the oven, then it will set as it's cooling. So like a real cooking program, here's one we made earlier. So this is what Olga's going to try. Lucky Olga. So we've got, here, now I'm sure you can see this much better. I was a little distracted earlier, I admit. It got a little bit browner than I wanted it to be. But this is what Olga's going to get to take back with her at her school as well. So I'm just going to serve a nice little portion for her. And we're going to ask Olga at the end which she likes better, because she had one made out of plums last weekend when we were practicing. So, and all of her girlfriends also liked it. Here we go. Here's a little bit of a nice portion for Olga. Just going to show you. I put it in a really lovely dish that I got in Bordeaux at one of the antique markets. And I'm just going to go ahead and dust it with a bit of sugar, because of course you've got to do that. It makes it look pretty. And then I'm going to give that to Olga to go enjoy over here for a moment. I'm not going to rush her to eat, especially because she's got to kind of remove her mask there. But what I am going to do is go back to that question I asked you earlier. So do you remember I asked you, what do you think is the French people's favorite dessert in France? Well, it turns out that even though they have different food habits than us, they're not all that different, because they love chocolate. So I don't know about you, but I love chocolate. And the dessert that they love is called fondant au chocolat, which Olga told me earlier might be in English called a lava cake. So although I would say that it's not tall, it's short, and it's basically made very simply with 5 ingredients. It's got dark chocolate, butter, eggs, sugar, and just a minimal amount of flour, hardly any flour. And when it's cooked in the oven, it's just cooked until the point where it's almost barely cooked and the middle is still melting. So we've got Olga coming back here. Okay, Olga, tell us, did you like it better with pear or with plum?
Actually, with pear.
With the pear?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So Olga he came here about a month ago now, a little more than a month and a half ago. So she'll have to stay for spring and try it with the cherries. There you go. So that's that. Now I think that Kathy's back.
I am on a new computer. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay.
And so I think you're going to be doing questions now. So we call that les questions.
We've already had a few questions asking about proportions, and
Okay.
Lily has asked if we could email the recipe, and the answer to that is
Yes, definitely. We're going to be emailing that to you tomorrow. And since some of you in the Southern Hemisphere probably weigh ingredients like they do in France, you'll have it for that type of measurement, and the American cups and spoons. So you'll get that tomorrow in your inbox when you wake up in the morning.
Well, it might be later in the day.
Or later.
About 24 hours from now. What other questions?
Okay.
Does anyone else have any other questions about anything that Jennifer has talked about?
Hopefully everybody heard everything.
Unlike me. What other fruits are in season that you could use? That question is from Isabel.
Okay, well, in fact, I did buy something else at the market today, which I'll show you. I was really excited to see these, but they weren't actually fruits, and they're not typically fruit and vegetable. Look at this. These are the new olives of the season, the very first olives of the season, and you can see that they're cracked. And so it's a very quick brining process. They smack it with a mallet and put it in the brine. So when we see those olives on the markets, we're like, oh wow, great! Now soon I got to start thinking about harvesting my own trees. So good question, Isabel.
Yes. Let's see. I think we have another question. Isn't cheese usually the last course?
That's an interesting question. So that shows that you probably traveled to Europe, whoever asked that question.
She has been in a couple of our groups, and I know she's traveled a lot in France. So.
Okay, so typically that would be in England, that would be last actually. So they would have the cheese, and they would often in England, they serve that with a glass of port wine. So that's kind of nice, sweet, salty ending. But here in France, they don't understand, they just want to have that after the other savory things, and then you have the dessert at the end.
So, and sometimes instead of dessert, some people might have cheese.
Yeah, sometimes instead of dessert. But if you're having a gastronomic meal that I talked about, I mean, you definitely would have the cheese and the dessert. On another note, I think that probably we're going to be doing another presentation all about cheese. And I'm going to give you a really good tip in that one about when you go to a fancy restaurant and the waiter comes up with his cheese trolley and you're like, I don't know which one to take. You can look at the colors of the cheese and you can know immediately what kind of cheese that you want according to whether you like goat cheese, cow's cheese, sheep cheese. So I'm going to explain all that in another session.
Okay, any other questions? I just saw one come in. We'll take this as the last question. Says, you remind me of my former French home in the Luberon. Not a question, but a nice comment.
Okay.
So, and
That's
several
nice.
other thank yous. Jennifer, I'm going to need to keep you up there because I'm on a different computer.
No problem.
I think my hard drive crashed, so we're flexible.
Okay.
To deal with anything.
Well, we had a few technical issues, but hopefully everybody enjoyed coming into my home and doing a little cooking and with Olga. It's been fun. It's been so much fun.
Yeah, I need
to talk to all of you.
I need to just say a few things in closing. First of all, we really appreciate everybody being here, and I'm really glad you got a chance to get to know Jennifer, and you'll be seeing more of her. If you'd like to make a donation for the presentation today, I can't bring up my slides, but if you go to our website, www.european-experiences.com/payments, and I'll send the link in the email tomorrow, but it's fairly simple. European Experiences/payments. There'll be some links for how you could pay through PayPal, Venmo. You could send a check or you could send through TransferWise if you can. And we totally understand it might be a tough time for some of you. So Jennifer, thank you. And 100% will go to Jennifer for her good work today. We have one more session that we scheduled. I was actually spent an hour or so on the Zoom call this morning with Ariana in Chianti. Some of you have met her. And Ariana is our co-leader on the Chianti Experience trip now, and she will be with Francesco Anacini, who runs his family winery, Vallone de Cecchioni. And we're going to have a whole session on the wine harvest. And I loved being part of it today, and I think you'll all love it. It's next Thursday at the same time. And then we are working now to put together a whole series of other programs that will take us into around the middle of December. And we hope to be able to announce that this weekend. So with that, that's the end of our program. I'll close down the meeting, and you should be able to fill out a survey then. Thank you all very much.
Au revoir.